voted yes.
Good morning. Okay, I have two announcements. Hello, could I have your attention, please? We have extra goodies this morning in recognition, celebration, and the generosity of Melinda and Warren, who celebrated their anniversary on Shabbat. So that's why we have extra goodies this morning. Oh, is it today? Well, happy anniversary. And the other announcement, we have an event tonight, and some of you have already signed up. It's the pre-Passover celebration. It's the annual event that Sisterhood holds in celebration and prior to Passover. So I'm hoping that if you haven't signed up, please do so. If you don't remember if you signed up, check with Susie over there, and she'll let you know. Because some of you sign up early, then you forget you signed up. So anyway, thank you. Oh, I get an applause for that? That's good.
You're standing for a blessing for your anniversary.
Oh, sweet. Look at that, a blessing.
By the way, the cake is cornmeal. Could have used the plate.
Lord bless you and protect you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his face upon you and give you peace and
I
health,
love his voice. I can hear it without hearing
and
it.
many, many more years together. And we say, Amen.
That was beautiful.
Thank you.
That was so nice.
Okay, so last week we were having a discussion about the Silk Road because it was part of our discussion about Croatia. And one of the questions that came up was Jerusalem along the Silk Road? And we determined that Jerusalem was not along the Silk Road proper. But I came across this article this morning, which I want to read to you. And this is from the Times of Israel. Yes, this is from the Times of Israel. And it says, first evidence of unknown ancient Israeli Silk Road uncovered in the Arava trash dump. So my first question to you is, have you heard that word before, Arava? Joed? Talk to me. Good. No. So first, Arava has two meanings. The first is, think Sukkot. Willow. Willow is Arava. But the second meaning, and this is more biblical, refers to a geographical area. And the geographical area is from the Dead Sea, we're talking about like mid to south Israel right now, down to the Gulf of Aqaba. That area, there is a valley called the Rift Valley. And it's mostly desert, it's dry, it's hot, it's inhospitable. And so Arava can also refer to like desert. And so when people refer to the Arava, they're talking about a specific area in Israel, as Joette said, which is a valley from the southern tip of the Dead Sea down to the Gulf of Aqaba. So when it says here, first evidence of unknown ancient Israeli Silk Road uncovered in Arava trash dump, it would make sense. Why? Because the area is dry and inhospitable, which preserves artifacts and cloth, right? So, newly uncovered remains of fabrics from the Far East, dating to some 1,300 years ago in Israel's Arava region, suggest the existence of a previously unknown Israeli Silk Road. Our findings seem to provide the first evidence that there was also an Israeli Silk Road used by merchants along the international trading routes. In a joint expedition sponsored by Germany, carried out by the University of Haifa, large quantities of cotton and silk fabrics that likely originated in China, India, and modern-day Sudan during the 8th century, so the 700s, right? What was happening in the 700s? CE, 700 CE. Good, 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 good. Very nice. The spread of Islam in a very big way. Where did Islam go in the 700s? Spain. The conquest of Spain by the Moors was in the 700s. I want to start doing that, or at least I want to have a class with you now, because after Northern Africa as well, yes. Because after all these years, if I throw out a date to you, I want you to be able to tell me kind of, sort of, maybe, what's going on in the world at that time, right? So we're going to start doing that because I want you to be able to do that. So 700, the conquest of Spain by the Moors. 600, Muhammad and Islam comes onto the scene. 200, Constantine is 300. What's 200? The redaction of the Mishnah by Judah Hanassi, which you are going to read about in 2 weeks, right? 6 are the books of the Mishnah, 5 are the, ready? Okay. All right. The findings have not been published in a scientific article yet, as the excavation was only completed 2 weeks ago. This is from a little while back. This isn't recent. This is January 2023. So this is already old news, but it's new news for us. The researchers say they provide for far-reaching implications for our understanding of ancient trade routes. The findings include a large portion of imported items, including fabrics bearing typical decorations of Indian origin and silk items from China. This is the first time that these items, dating back to this period, have been found in Israel. The Silk Road was a network of trade routes used to move exotic goods from China through India, Egypt, and the Middle East and Europe. Most routes were active between the 2nd century and the mid-15th century. So the Silk Route was operational between 130 BCE, 130 BCE. What was going on in 130? That was CE. But good call. That's CE, 130 BCE. What are we talking about? Good. The Maccabees are going to become ascendant 30 years after that, 165. Yes, and the Pharisees as well. So that's one. Yes, Rosalie. Okay, so
My question is, were there different Silk Roads? Because I had read somewhere that it ended in Mali, which is south of Morocco, and so there must have been different routes.
So the main Silk Road went from Xi'an, China in the east, going west to Antioch, Turkey. There were many tributaries, which is what was brought up over here on the left side last week. I forget who said it. There were many side roads out of this main thoroughfare. So on the east end, we have Xi'an, China. Anybody know anything about Xi'an? Good. Xi'an was the ancient capital of China, and it's where the terracotta army was discovered. Does everyone know what I mean by the terracotta army? Yes? Okay. To the western side, it ended in Antioch, Turkey. And then there were a number of smaller tributary roads to various cities, and Jerusalem apparently was one of them. Hang on, I'll repeat it. Sure. Lana says it would make sense that that's the case because there were a lot of other places that wanted their economies to flourish, and so they would want to be in on the trade from the Silk Road. And besides what? And they'd want to pick up more supplies, yes. According to the archaeologists, their ongoing investigation is unique in that it explores changes in the Arava Valley over long periods of time by analyzing accumulation of garbage at sites along the trading routes. Now that makes sense to us. We can kind of figure out what people were doing by what they threw away, right? Were these like expeditions on camels? Were there camels involved? What do you think? Yes. I think so, yes, absolutely. Absolutely. We started examining not the well or the fortress, but things in the perimeter. Previous research and academic discussions of trade relied mainly on historical accounts from people far away. We discovered the trash mounds 2 years ago and started digging. We dug holes 5 meters deep. Nearly all the mounds we found included many organic material. The large volume of such material is the mind-blowing aspect of the excavation. The items we found allowed us to touch, see, and measure them with molecular tools. One specific finding that excited researchers was fabrics bearing ikat design, I-K-A-T, a technique originating from Indonesia that includes tying the yarns before dyeing the warp or weft. Ikat fabrics have only been found in a small number of sites in the Middle East, and researchers say these findings represent one of the earliest archaeologically documented occurrences of this trip. So the bottom line is they found a number of fabrics that did not originate in Israel in the Arava region. Therefore, it can only be assumed that that region participated in some way with trade along the Silk Route. And so they imagined that there was an ancient Israeli Silk Road also. So there was a route that passed through present-day Israel to bring in items. And while that sounds, we can say, okay, well, yeah, that kind of makes sense. The people would want to trade. They want access to spices and fat textiles from other places. But remember, especially southern Israel today. Southern Israel today is quite, beautiful. You know, we have Eilat, we have Eilat, not a lot. Eilat, E-I-L-A-T, right? And we have a number of cities that are quite lovely in southern Israel. In those days, southern Israel was hot. And it's still hot. It was hot, and there was desert, and it was not built up, and it was not hospitable, and it was not pleasant, right? In the same way that when the Israelites, the Jews, left Babylon in 538 after Cyrus lets them go back, most didn't go back. Some did. You know, the remnants of the monarchy and the government officials and some important people in the kingdom of Judah went back. But most of the people stayed. Why? Because Babylon was a much nicer place to be than Judah was. Okay. So we left off last week at the Reconquista. You'll recall that the Reconquista was the retaking, the reconquest of Spain from the Moors by Ferdinand and Isabella in 1492. Ferdinand and Isabella united the kingdoms of Castile and Aragon of Spain and brought to the monarchy a unified Spain. And of course, then they brought in the Inquisition. And some of those ideas from the Inquisition, even though Croatia, modern-day Croatia, was not within Spanish territory, ideas from the Inquisition did spread over other parts of Europe and the Balkans. So it was not a good time for Jews. That's the 15th century. By 1622, the early 17th century, we have the first accusation of blood libel within Croatia, the territory we now call Croatia. And someone tell me again about blood libel, in case there's somebody who doesn't know.
Accusing the Jews of killing Christians and using their blood to make gods.
Good. So, say again. It's the best. Oh, I see. Come on, turn off. Silent mode off. No, I want silent mode on. Silent mode on. Good. Okay, so there.
I just want to specify, it was Christian babies, children that they killed.
Yes, Christian children that they killed. Yes. So there was a very common, even until the 20th century in Russia in the early 1900s, that around Passover time, around Easter Passover time, Jewish families would murder a Christian child and use its blood to bake the matzah for Passover. Now, all of us here,
You won't believe it, but unfortunately it's true. Working 21st century, I'm eating my matzah at work, and somebody from the Philippines came over. I said, "Oh, that's what you are baking with the blood of a child." 21st century, 21st century.
when did this happen?
10 years ago.
10 years ago?
So,
At
Los Angeles. Los Angeles. I was working with Fireman's Fund, and my coworker was from Philippine lady, very nice lady, but walked up to me as I am eating my matzah, and I said, "My goodness, they are living in the Middle Age, and how do you change it? How do you change them?"
I had somebody, I used to travel around in a band,
I used to travel around in a band
and in Saginaw, Michigan,
in Saginaw, Michigan.
asking, you know, who I am,
They kept asking who you are,
different. So I finally said, I'm Jewish.
and she finally said, "I'm Jewish." And she said, "Where are your horns?" Yeah. When you moved into your home in Burbank, a neighbor, college educated, Olympian, asked you if there was blood in the mezuzah. You told him if there were any liquid in that mezuzah, it would have dried out. Yeah, so this was a very common charge during the Middle Ages. Very common. That Jews would use the blood of a Christian child to prepare matzah for Passover. Oh, so really good. Thank you. Thank you for having the courage to ask that question. Thank you. So the question was it true? No, not in any way, shape, or form was it true. So, remember that of all of the things that we might use to bake matzah or to cook in any way, shape, or form, the last, down at the bottom, no possible way would we have blood in anything. That's how you kosher the meat. It's getting rid of it. The one thing we are forbidden to eat by God is blood, right? So, it's so preposterous that that would be the accusation. That was all throughout the Middle Ages. Christian, that was a common charge from Christianity. So when people eat rare meat, is that not allowed in the Jewish religion? It's allowed, but the kosher meat that you buy, if you are keeping kosher and you buy kosher meat, that blood has already been drained out. So you're not going to see, if you cook it rare, you're still not going to see pools of blood on the plate. It will be undercooked, but you won't. Yeah, those are juices from the meat. Those are juices from the meat, not blood.
Question, when did the Passion Play start? Because that also involved a lot of fervor around.
Yeah, I don't know. Joette our resident historian, Joette can look it up for us. Can you look it up for us, please?
In Oberammergau in Germany,
Yes.
They perform the Passion Play every 10 years. Still.
Great. Okay. So, in the 17th century, within the Habsburg Empire, I'm sure many, all of you have heard the word Habsburg before. So, yes. So, the Habsburgs were a monarchy, a hereditary monarchy. Where did they rule? Austria-Hungary. Very good. Romania. So, what you had was in Europe, you had Austria-Hungary, then you had Germany here, which was part of the Holy Roman Empire.
Use the mic, please. We have people at home.
So, if we're talking about Eastern Europe, we had the Habsburg monarchy. In the center of Europe, we had the Holy Roman Empire. Then we had France, and then we had Spain. Okay? The Habsburgs are notable for having a number of different wars with other countries. And Croatia is down here within the Habsburg Empire. The most famous interaction, certainly in Europe, for the Habsburgs was the 30 Years' War. The 30 Years' War took place right around 1650. It ended in 1650, and it was between the Habsburgs, the Protestants of the Habsburg Empire, against the Bourbons, who were Catholics of the House of France, in the Bourbon House of France. So the rulers of France, who were Catholic, against the Protestant rulers of the Habsburg Empire. And it lasted 30 years. Obviously, it was a religious war. The Jews of Croatia were caught a little bit in the middle. So the Habsburgs did not allow Jews to settle in northern Croatia. These were Protestants, right? We're talking 17th century. We're talking about the 1600s. So think about what's going on in the world in the 1500s, in the 100 years before that, what was happening that Renaissance printing press, Protestant Reformation. That's the biggie in terms of this particular item, right? The Protestant Reformation began around the 1500s, and so there was virulent anti-Jewish sentiment among Lutherans. Martin Luther, right? Among Lutherans. And Lutheranism was the predominant form of Protestantism for a long time. So the Jews were not permitted to settle in northern Croatia, which was property of the Habsburg Empire, who were Protestants and therefore against Jews. In yes? Is the blood libel a Protestant thing or a Catholic thing? Catholic for sure. Catholic for sure. How do we know that? Thank you. Very good. Because remember, the answer was because the Protestants didn't come along until later. Because remember, the blood libel starts much earlier. 13th century. The Protestant Reformation doesn't happen until the 1500s. So, There was no Protestantism when blood libel started, so definitely Catholics. Good question, though. Yeah, makes sense.
By the way, passion plays 12th century.
Passion plays were the 12th century. Okay, the 12th century is what years? The 1100s. Good. What's happening in the 1100s besides the passion plays? Crusades, good. The first crusade is when? Basically 1100. Basically 1100. So, yes. So, but don't try, think in large terms. 1100. First crusade. The expulsion of Jews from various places, absolutely. Who's from England first, and then from France, and then Spain. Good. England, France, and Spain in that order. In our tradition, what famous figure is 1100? Rashi's a little earlier. Maimonides is 1100. Rashi's slightly earlier, but you're in the ballpark. You're in the ballpark. Very good. It's also the beginning of the very first beginnings of Kabbalah in Spain. So we have Cordovero and some of the other Spanish Kabbalists. All right, good. So in 1753, so remember, in the 17th century, in the 1600s, Jews cannot settle in northern Croatia. By 1753, some Jews were allowed back to settle. Why? For the reason that everybody wants us. Because we were good for the economy. We were good for the economy. We were merchants. Everybody wanted us, right? And so I'm going to take a stab here and figure out, or guess, I should say, that the Habsburg rulers realized by the time the 18th century had come along, and we're in the 17th centuries, and people are moving from an agricultural economy into a more mercantile economy. We're not in an industrial yet, mercantile. The Habsburg rulers are like, wait a minute, we kicked all the Jews out. That was kind of dumb. That was kind of dumb. Everybody else is doing really well with them. We better get them back here. So they let some back in. And by 1782, Emperor Joseph II issues an edict of tolerance, meaning that Jews can come back. They're allowed to settle. They're not yet allowed to own, Jews are not yet allowed to own land or engage in a guild that had to do with trade or agriculture. But lots and lots of Jews then returned to the area that is now Croatia. Say again, so they went to surrounding territories that were more tolerant of Jews. And then when Emperor Joseph II allows them back, they come back. And they come back in a lot, come back. Between 1843 and 1873, those 30 years, Jews are gradually granted equality. In 1867, during that period when the Jews are gradually granted more and more equality, the great synagogue in Zagreb is built. And from all accounts, it's not there anymore, I'll tell you about that in a minute. From all accounts, it was really quite a beautiful, beautiful synagogue for its time. By 1880, there were 13,000 Jews, and by 1900, there were 20,000 Jews. So between 1879 and 1900, 20 years, 1880 to 1900, Jewish population increased from 869 Jews to 20,000 Jews. And Zagreb was the main center. Jews at that time were overrepresented in industrial and wholesale businesses. That's not a surprise to any of us, right? That's not a surprise to any of us. You know, I'm taking my very last class that I need for my doctorate right this minute at Spertus on Zoom, and it's Jewish diaspora communities. And so we are talking about Bialystok in what is now the Ukraine. And how when those from Bialystok came to the United States, came to Australia, came to Venezuela, how they tried to recreate their particular communities in the new places, and how when they came to the United States especially, because Bialystok, it was like a shtetl town in the Pale of Settlement when in its heyday, and they were very famous for textiles, meaning that they worked with fabrics. So they came to the Lower East Side, and so many of them were very, very good at being tailors, seamstress, et cetera, that when they came to the Lower East Side, there were so many Jews who could not find work because they were not educated and they were not skilled. Thank you so much. The Jews from Bialystok already came very skilled in textiles. And we know that the shmata business on the Lower East Side was huge, right? So they were able to walk in and find work immediately where other Jewish immigrants were not, because they were skilled already. Your grandfather was born in 1862, Lithuania, and his entire family were fishermen. And they came to the United States later. Did they find work as fishermen here in the United States? No. No. Okay. All right. So they were overrepresented in industrial and wholesale businesses. Education and skill. It is what has set our people above other groups forever. I still get questions all the time about how come the Jews are so successful. Education and skill. Because I don't know about you folks, but my parents were just education, college. And I expect many of you were the same. Our parents just, that is what we do as a people. A- was not accepted. Yeah. Because our parents pushed us to become educated.
I have a weird theory.
You have a weird theory.
That all of those things, definitely the education.
Yes?
I feel like throughout the ages, everything that we talk about, Jews have overcome survival of the fittest.
Jews have overcome survival of the fittest. Throughout the millennia of persecution,
we have become the most
resilient and adaptable people around in the world. But how did we become resilient and adaptable? Education and skill. So you're right. I think you are right. You're right. And it's through education and skill that we have risen above. And we see it played out here in Los Angeles as we are sitting here within the Asian community. Their parents are are tough on those kids. 3/4 of UCLA is Asian now, or something like that. And good for them. Good for them. You know, they really and 50% of Berkeley. Where you don't see it, tragically, is in the Hispanic community and the Black community. Those communities have not risen in the same way that the Asian community has, among immigrants anyway, certainly the Hispanic community, because I don't know, for whatever reason, either their parents weren't educated or they didn't understand that the way up is through education. It's very unfortunate. It's very unfortunate. Lana. Eventually, we're going to finish Croatia.
Okay. When I grew up, it wasn't whether you were going to college, it was which college. I mean, it was a given. Now, this is going to surprise you. My grades were so bad, I didn't apply to UCLA. I went to Los Angeles City College and transferred into UCLA.
And there's nothing wrong with that at all. At all. Yes. I have many of my voice students, some of my voice students who are younger have asked me, what I'm thinking about college, I don't know. And I said, these days, the way you do it is go to community college, get your GE requirements, your general ed requirements, Science 101, English 101, History 101, get them done at community college for way less money, and then transfer to a 4-year college and finish your degree.
My college education was at Los Angeles City.
The better half of your education was at Los Angeles. Great. This is how it's done.
So there's a common adage that the Asians are the Jews of today.
The common adage is that the Asians are the Jews of today.
And secondly, I taught at a community college.
You taught at a community college.
I was in Monterey Park, East Los Angeles College, where there's a large Chinese population.
Where there's a large Chinese population.
Always at the top of
They were always at the top. Yeah? It's very, very true. Okay. So, so within this time, the 1880 to 1900, the Jewish population in Croatia had increased from 800 to 20,000. And Jews made up, at that time, some of Croatia's wealthiest families. It's not surprising. We just talked about why. And within the Jewish community, there arose a conflict between the Zionists and the assimilationists. So the Zionists wanted, remember, we're talking about 1900, so clearly Israel didn't exist. But Herzl had already put forth the idea that the Jewish people needed a homeland. And so there were many fervent believers in Zionism, but there were also many Jews in Croatia at that time who felt, look, we need to just, like in Germany, we need to get our civil rights. We need to just blend into society so that we are not persecuted and we can have good lives and our children aren't persecuted and made fun of, and we can succeed and be happy in our lives. And those were two very distinct camps. I'm proud of my Judaism. I want to wear it like a badge on my chest. No, I want to blend into society and have a good life. I don't want the problems that come with being a Jew. They can still have their religion and practice their religion. At that time, the Zionists outnumbered the assimilationists, and they were more powerful all the way until World War II. So during World War I, Susie, Croatia becomes part of Yugoslavia. Remember Yugoslavia? And by 1940, there were 11,000 Jews in Zagreb, and 76% of them were Ashkenazic. The Nazis invade in 1941, and they forced the Jews to wear armbands and a yellow Star of David. Within Croatian society, there arose a fascist regime, a fascist part of Croatians who were allied with Nazism. And they were called the Ustase, U-S-T-A-S-E. For those of you, I'm sure many of you know, during World War II, I mean, some of the worst stuff. Anti-Jewish Croatians were particularly brutal and particularly horrible, particularly. The Ustase was a fascist part of Croatian society that came to power in 1941 through 1945. In some ways, I mean, like Vichy France, right? Vichy was the part of France that was sympathetic towards Hitler. There were concentration camps, and the major concentration camp within Croatia was called Jasenovac, Jasenovac, with a little accent on it. I'm not sure in Slavic language, maybe Jasenovac, maybe. Someone tell me? Jasenovac. Okay. Others were sent to Auschwitz. There were 20,000 Jews who were murdered from Croatia. They didn't have many more than 20,000 Jews, right? So, like most of Croatian Jewry. In 1942, the Ustase government within Croatia razed, R-A-Z-E-D, tore down, obliterated the great synagogue in Zagreb. It was no more. Luckily, the 8 Torahs within that synagogue were saved. I couldn't find out where those Torahs ended up, but they were saved. The Torahs were saved. I know we had in our synagogue for several years a Holocaust Torah from Czechoslovakia that we were keeping safe. By 1945, in Croatia, atheism was the official policy, because you're thinking 1945, it becomes part of the Soviet influence. Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia. After the State of Israel comes into being, half of the survivors of Croatian Jewry left to go to Israel. The other half stayed, obviously. And 80% of the 1,500 who stayed were already assimilated, and they were the product of mixed marriages, so Judaism was not strong within that family. By 1991, there were 2,000 Jews left in Croatia. In 2001, there were 495, and 323 of those 495 lived in Zagreb. There was a special, they were recognized by the Croatian government very recently as a national minority, means they were a protected national minority. And there are Jews who had assimilated into the government, into the parliament. The Jewish synagogue in Split, S-P-L-I-T, is 500 years old. It's the third oldest active synagogue in Europe. When I pulled up the picture of it, it's quaint. It's a little synagogue, you know. It's not this. Yeah, this Zagreb, the great synagogue in Zagreb, was like. For those of you who have been to Eastern Europe, I haven't yet, but for those of you who have been to Eastern Europe and have seen some of the really tremendous synagogues in East Prague, I guess, and others, this is nothing like that. But it's still there, and it's still going. There are 100 members. Probably. Yeah. Have you seen it? It's a little, even the street is little, yes. They have no rabbi. They have 100 members. They do celebrate Shabbat, and they do have access to kosher food. I think from within the country. They have kosher butchers. They must, yeah. Because it didn't say anything about being imported from anywhere, so they must. And the last numbers that I have on them is that this year, in 2026, there are 1,700 Jews in Zagreb. 1,700.
So there is a large synagogue in Zagreb,
There's a large synagogue in Zagreb,
and it has a section for Jews.
and it has a section for Jews.
And Jewish people who are buried there must be very prominent because they're in the forefront of the synagogue.
And so there are important people who are buried in the front of the synagogue.
Huge monuments.
Right. So when you say there's a large section for Jews, but it's a synagogue.
No, it's a cemetery.
Cemetery, sorry. A large cemetery in Zagreb. And there's a large section for Jews. Okay. I'll end today with just a little story, which was kind of interesting. So I did a funeral yesterday. It was she is Jewish. He was Christian. And so obviously he's the one who died. And they had a blended family. She had 2 children. He had 4. They came together like the Brady Bunch. And they all lived happily together. It was a mixed marriage, mixed traditions, mixed everything, and everybody got along just fine. So when I spoke to the wife, who's Jewish, I told her, look, the children want to speak, and one person who is Christian wants to speak at the funeral. And I said, look, that's all fine, but you have to tell everyone, you cannot say Jesus, you cannot say Christ, you cannot say Messiah, and you cannot say Savior. Those would be very disrespectful in a Jewish funeral home. So you have to tell everyone, please do not say any of those 4 words. And luckily, they didn't. However, the Christian woman who did speak came this close. She, at the end of her speech, and she kept it very generic, God, Lord, please, good. That's because I told him you could do that. So at the end of her speech, she was saying, Lord, please protect this family, please, bless them, And at her very last words, and in your name we pray. And I went, oh, God.
But that is the way that Marv, in the Air Force, as a Jewish chaplain, encouraged the Christian chaplains to do at an interfaith.
Yes.
Do it that way.
Yes.
As opposed to their preferred way.
Absolutely. It didn't cross the line, thank God. But for me, it was just like,
So why was this
so why was this,
man having a Jewish funeral?
so why was this Christian man having a Jewish funeral? I believe that he and the wife bought plots together at Mount Sinai, and therefore it was she wanted a rabbi for the service. And so they ended up calling me, and they were very happy because during my speaking about the father, I did, and in our shared Jewish and Christian traditions, that kind of thing. But I just, in his name we pray. It's just, yeah. In your name, yes, and in your name we pray. Yes, that's what it was. We know what that is in Christianity, which is, look, good. I have no problems if you're Christian, and in Jesus' name we pray. That's okay, but it's just so Christian. It's just such a Christian phrase that I was just like, yes. Does Sinai sell to mixed marriages? Yes, absolutely. Oh, sure. If you have, yes, as long as one of the partners is Jewish, sure. Yes. Okay, last question. Then I got to let you go for a break or comment.
From Prague. Yeah. The Prague Jewish Cemetery is under the auspices of the rabbinate, and okay, is it okay? And they allow for mixed marriages if they want to be buried at that cemetery. The non-Jewish partner has to be cremated, and then he can or she can be put in the same grave.
How interesting. Anyway, it ended up yesterday. The family was very, very happy with how I did the funeral, but I just thought it was one of those moments when as a rabbi, I'm up in front of, and it was, I mean, the audience was mixed, mostly Christian. Mostly Christian. And it was just like, oh, where are my Jews? Where are my Jews? Where are my Jews? And of course, when we got to graveside, the only person who knew how to say Kaddish was the wife. I was expecting that, and that happens in almost all my Jewish funerals as well. It's frightening that no one knows how to say Kaddish, and I almost want to cry at these funerals. It's like, come on. If there's one prayer that you need to learn, please know how to say Kaddish. Please, you're Jewish, know how to learn. Anyway, it worked out fine. They were very happy with me. And okay, everybody, have a great week, superb week. We have, I guess, one more week and then Passover after that? Yeah, oh my goodness.
We went to Forest Lawn next door. We had a funeral at night, and there was a whole pack of coyotes howling.
Oh, yeah, I have seen them sometimes during the day roaming.
But I mean, they were howling together.
Yeah, wow. I'm sorry, I took up a little bit of time on this.
Library. I spent 14 hours for texting with these 5 pages. So I was going to get an F in this class. I have to ask if it's okay. You're going to get an F in that class.
I could do is I could just say, oh, there's a public radio station. Hello, hello. Do, do, do. All right. Is this the one that has a lot of reverb? Maybe the other one. Do, do, do. All right. This one has less echo. Less echo, I think. So we'll go with this. Do, do. This is just a graphic, by the way. So Angela Lansbury is not Jewish. This is not what this is about. It's a GIF. It's just what is the unsung hero of the Pesach story? There is Angela eating her popcorn or maybe her matzah and just is very intrigued. So it's just, just to make the title page pop. This is nothing to do with Murder, She Wrote or any of the other wonderful movies that this national treasure has been in. But yeah, I want to invite everyone to keep snacking, keep helping yourselves to refreshments, and I'll get started as it's just about 10 past 11. And as we have put into the ether already, it's kind of Pesach time now. We've cleared Purim, and I wanted therefore to offer something that was Pesach adjacent, or even something that I think about a lot during Pesach, wearing the hat of a female Jewish educator. I always like to pay attention and elevate female stories in the Torah, just because the males are very much present and there and celebrated. And yeah, damage has been done. It's been a patriarchy for thousands of years, and that's the way things needed to be and were. We can't dismantle and change. I'm not a violent person, but the way to kind of be a more healthy society is to get the chance to have a platform to celebrate some incredible female energy. And there is a character who I want to talk about, and I think I've talked about her before. I do remember dimly giving a Devat Torah at Adat Ariel years and years ago, but I don't think I've presented it as a kind of deep dive text study. So I thought we would get the chance to do this, because it's also going to have a lot of little Pesach snippets, and that's something you could potentially bring to your Seder night. And if not, well, you'll have studied some Torah, some Midrash, you'll have had the chance to learn more. It's always fun and games. So no matter what, this is a worthwhile session at this time of year. So we're first going to open it up to any guesses as to who Rabbi Yarkin's unsung heroine of the Pesach story is. Who do we think? Who do we think we're going to be learning about today? Women in the Pesach story. Miriam, a good contender. No. Anyone else? But again, I was hoping someone would say Miriam. That shows you know your stuff, because Miriam is incredibly important, and not a big enough fuss is made of her, because truly, she is the reason Moses is saved. Moses is weaned on Israelite milk, because she gets the wet nurse of her own mother. That Miriam is the reason people bring timbrels with them to dance when the sea splits. Miriam takes care of everyone in the desert. Miriam is the matriarch of Pesach. So a very worthy contender. Anyone else, though? Because I don't make this easy. Ooh, Pharaoh's daughter, or But Pharaoh. Another heroine who is not paid enough attention. No, just as a spoiler, I'm not talking about But Pharaoh, but she is incredible, and it even is said that she leaves Egypt with the Jewish people because she makes that choice, and that's something that is so exciting to me. The thought that Egyptians, well, again, we talked about people of other faiths joining Judaism or living in parallel with Jewish people. That exodus was a moment of choice, whereby Jews chose to leave. A third apparently chose to stay. So not every Jew even left Egypt. They were just like, better the devil you know than the desert. And Egyptians left with the Jewish people and became part of the tribe. Like, we never then hear that those Egyptians attacked, but they believed that this new leader, this new tribe was the way to go. So, but Pharaoh, a wonderful example. But no, anyone else? Zipporah. Nadia. No, but another incredible addition to who could be our unsung hero. I will in 2 seconds cover her because it's really important we know our characters. Zipporah is the Midianite woman who marries Moses and keeps him honest and gives him sons and cares about their Jewish identity, because Moses didn't even get the chance to circumcise them. He gets so busy with the God and with the leadership that he's not very present at home. And thank God that she is there. And we yet again have an intermarriage. And she is very much extolled. She is a good person. She never converts to Judaism, and Moses never becomes a Midianite. But here you've got yet again, Moses himself is never condemned. There's one gossip at one point that Miriam is spreading some gossip about Moses' wife, but we're not really sure what the nature of that gossip ever is. But yeah, she is also someone vital to the story because she lets Moses go back to Egypt. She could always say, "Don't leave me and the flock." But she is the one who kind of supports and distances and is just a rock to Moses. These are all fabulous women. Any other contenders? Please, Lana. Moses' mother, Yocheved, another unsung heroine who had the bravery and the chutzpah to get pregnant, even knowing the decree that if this was going to be a boy baby, into the Nile he would go. So she also, were it not for her, there would be no Moshe. She did. She gets back in the palace and becomes the wet nurse, which is, again, so beautiful. And you can imagine her sneakily teaching him a little bit of Hebrew kind of thing as well. So, yeah, she is, again, a pillar. Am I going to be talking about her? Nope. Anyone else? Ooh, Shifra and Puach. They are our Egyptian midwives who refused. And again, this, at their own lives, they were the righteous Gentiles of their generation. They refused to kill the baby boys because Pharaoh and the ministry had decreed these Israelites are breeding like rabbits. We need to be stopped. We want to kind of limit their army. We're not going to take away the women. We're going to try to take away the men so that they can't revolt and be too much of a threat. And they would lie to Pharaoh and say, "Oh, those babies, they came out too fast. We couldn't even catch them. The Israelites just stayed alive." But they were brave and they risked their own lives. So they are also, thanks to them, it's one of those Dayenu, like in some ways, like we need all of these women are lifting up Moses, Aaron, Joshua, all the Israelites. And yet, I'm not going to be talking about them. So do we have anyone left? All right, I will be talking about Serach, the daughter of Asher. Now, some of you are going to think, what is she even in the Pesach story? She bloody well is, okay? But no one knows about her, which is why I thought I have to teach you this. Like I said, some of you might be familiar with some of this material from long ago, but it's really important because she has a pivotal moment, and I think in the same way that but Pharaoh is able to rescue this baby from the Nile, or Miriam actually convinces her mum and dad to have a baby. Like, there's a lot of very female moments of courage and bravery. Serach bat Asher has a couple of these moments. And there's a mystery surrounding her as well. And when there's a mystery, when there's textual ambiguity, the rabbis get to run in and make up stories. And we're going to look at definitely some things that are not in the Torah, okay? This is very midrashic. However, her name is in the Torah, so she seems to be real and specific. I'll read out aloud our first source, and this is 2nd century. We're reflecting. Serach, the daughter of Asher, or in Hebrew you just say Serach bat Asher. And again, Asher, as you might remember, is one of our 12 tribes of Jacob. One of the 12 tribes of Jacob. So we're talking one generation removed from the Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the big three. She's the daughter of Asher, which I think would therefore put her as the niece of Joseph. Right. So she's there. She's with Ephraim and Manasseh in terms of age. Like, those are the cousins she's playing with in the sandbox. She is among those who came to Egypt because she's still going to be alive. You know, Joseph gets everyone to Egypt. So she is clearly going to be there. Quick question, yes?
How? It doesn't make sense to me, because I was reading this, okay, if she's the daughter of Asher, who entered Egypt at the time of Joseph.
Right.
Joseph, there were generations.
Yes, this is what this is going to be about. So hold your horses, because this is literally the problem the rabbis have. So you have a rabbinic soul. Well done. Because you're right. This is the problem, and this is why it's important to know where she fits in our lineage, because it doesn't make sense. I'll read this out, and we'll see why there is a textual problem, and this entire session is how the rabbis solve the problem. So, she is the daughter of Asher, you know, therefore I think I would say, daughter of Asher, Jacob is her grandpa. Jacob is her grandpa. So she arrives in Egypt. She was among those who came to Egypt, but she was also among those who left Egypt. And again, we're quoting Bereshit chapter 46, because there's a list of all the people who go to Egypt with the descendants. You know, it's literally Jacob, Joseph's tribes. But there's a problem. In Numbers, which is our fourth book of the Torah, she's still listed as being alive, because we have another recalling of this. She enters the land of Israel. So that's many hundreds of years later. And it says the name of Asher's daughter was Serach. And you wouldn't need to say that if she weren't there. It definitely feels like she is still alive, which means if you do good math, you've got your 40 years in the desert and before they get to Israel. So she's got those 40 years. But it is also said that after Joseph, there's 200, 300, maybe even 400 years before Moses arises. So there's hundreds of years of the Jewish people who started off as one family, breeding, integrating, becoming numerous, and then being enslaved and having the whole shenanigans of the Exodus story. So this is why I have my bullet points. I'm asking some questions. Is she human? Is she an immortal being? An angel, a Time Lord? Anyone watch Doctor Who? Or is it a misprint? Is it that it's just unclear and that for some reason she just merited being brought up again in Numbers? Did they just, when they're splicing texts together? So again, I know you've had your hand up for ages, my wonderful Susie. So yes, we're going to get there. So yes, I love that you have some familiarity with it. You're going to see this, and we're going to say thank you for remembering that. We're going to see why, and we're going to see what she does. But first of all, we just have to get intrigued, right? That's why we have our detective going, what is going on here? Why is this lady so old or so timeless? Something weird is happening. So the rabbis are going to use this as an excuse to tell us why. Why does she deserve incredibly long life? And I also want to invite the skeptics among us, the people who are very into Bible criticism, the idea that, of course, humans wrote this and they did their best. It's allowed to be a misprint. We're allowed to also say, this was a mistake. There was just a textual error, and for some reason this happened. But we also want to play with this because the rabbis use these possible misprints or possible hints at angelic beings or, supernatural beings, because there's some emotional truths that we will learn that are beautiful and interesting and exciting. So, right, it could be a memory, 100%. Yeah. So there's this kind of lovely, let's remember her, but again, why? Why are we listing this random girl hundreds of years later? Why is this girl important? Because even if a person wrote it by mistake, it was written, it's in the Torah, her name is there again. So there must be some deep, fruitful purpose as to what we're going to do with this person. Yes, Lana.
Doesn't say she was alive. She could have been carried out in an ossuary.
This is an interesting point. Does it say she's alive? It says the name of her was Serach, and that was Chaya, like it was was as in past tense. The thing is that in the other lineages, no one else is listed at all. You know, we have the people who are there. So we're like this person, this person, this person. Yes, that's going to be something that will also come up. But we don't have and the bones of Serach bat Asher. We're getting very caught up now with good possibilities as to why she might not be physically alive then. But the way it is presented is we're talking about the tribes that then come to Israel and are then going to take the land. So it's a list of living people, and then suddenly we have, you know, the Asherites, and her name is in there specifically. No other female is kind of mentioned in that area. So what we'll do is we'll strap in and we'll have a look at her origin story. But again, these are very good points, very good insights, and that also might solve the problem for the rabbis. But the rabbis choose not to go there. So they choose this. They choose this. Midrash Haggadol. This is 14th century, it's written down, but it was probably in the ether for thousands of years before that. They ask the question, what did Serach do to merit such a long life? Well, she was the one who undertook the task of informing Jacob that Joseph was still alive. The brothers feared that the news might shock Jacob to death, and so Serach delicately delivered the news of Joseph's presence in Egypt using a harp. Random. There is no mention of that in the Torah. And through song, I'm your granddaughter, your beloved son is still alive. You know. Through song, gently told him that Joseph is still alive. And Jacob doesn't have a heart attack, doesn't die of shock, because again, that was a very dramatic many, many years, right? We remember the Joseph story. He's in the pit. The brothers come home with a bloody coat and say he was mauled by wild animals. He is dead. And it's many, many, like 40 years later that they go to Egypt and he's actually still alive. They sold him. And you think, wow, Jacob, who is an old man grieving, the shock could kill him if you're suddenly told, by the way, not only was your favorite child alive, but your other children are awful liars and tried to kill him and deceived you. Your whole earth is going to come unraveled, right? Your whole fundamental belief system at that point. And it's also going to be so uplifting and unbelievable. And that's a beautiful moment that the rabbis were like, how did Jacob get the news? Who told him? And so they have Serach, a girl, because again, there was maybe this understanding that girls were good with words, good with communication, good with being gentle and sweet. Or she was set up and told what to do by big boys. You, little girl, go tell your grandpa something. We are cowards. You do it. But poor little Serach gets this job, and she does it well. And she's clearly like a gifted maestro. And I love this, because it could have just said, oh, she told him gently. But they say she has a song to sing, and she plays an instrument. It's beautiful. So she does this task, which is, again, quite tough, you know? It's like you're having to drop a bomb, and you have to be kind to this elderly person. So it's quite a big deal what she does. And you know how Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham are kind of magical. Their blessings mean something. She gets a special blessing. Like ding, 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 your eyes should always light up when you hear blessing. You know, all of the squabbles of, you know, all over the blessings. Bless me, no, bless me, I shall inherit. What's her blessing? Living forever, immortality, Eliyahu Hanavi, right? You saved my life. because you saved Joseph's life, even though, you know what I mean. But like, you brought Joseph back from the dead for me, you will merit foreverness. I mean, that's bonkers. That's beautiful. Just like, wow. So, yeah. But like I said, there's no hint of this in the Torah. Like, it doesn't say Sarah and Jacob were best buds, or Sarah could play the harp and was a gifted musician. But what a lovely, beautiful, meaningful story that also tells us how important it is to deliver news in a sensitive way, right? We see several qualities of Sarah. Bravery, willingness to stand up to boys and do something, willingness to be subtle and sweet. So, yeah, she gets this blessing from Jacob. So that validates the mistake. Right, she's still alive because Jacob blessed her with long life. Again, this isn't in the Torah, so we're allowed to say, I don't like it, we're allowed to say, I love it, but it's in our Jewish stories. Right? So this is mainstream Jewish teaching. Quick point, and I'm going to move on, because we haven't quite touched Pesach yet. We're going to get deeply into Pesach. Yes?
It's really not quick, but, okay, so the blessings are like, I give you the inheritance blessing, I give
Yeah.
you this blessing, but living forever is not something a man should be able to do.
Yes.
This is something only God can do.
Interesting. I'm going to say that out loud for the few people who might be at home, or if you didn't quite hear that. It's a beautiful reflection, which is that this blessing itself is kind of bonkers, possibly blasphemous, because can Jacob bestow another person with immortality? Like, we don't normally see this kind of blessing. We see quite practical blessings, which are really the will and testament of a dying person. You will be the person who carries the name, the birthright. We do see, I bless you with long life. We see that a lot. We often see it from God as well. If you follow my commandments, your children will live well, right? But yes, we don't see this as God. We're allowed to say this is a very chutzpah, a very daring interpretation. So you're absolutely right. We like the idea that maybe Jacob checked in with God, but either way, it seems that God wrote off on this blessing and said, sure thing, Jacob. But yes, I love that you noticed this is very rare. This is not the normal way of things. We don't have our ancestors just be like, here's a reward for you, immortality, when you said some nice news to me. That's big, and that's a lot. I don't want us to get too caught up in this, but please. Great question. Exactly. So by the way, strap in, because we are going to have a look at where else she appears. I love that you went there, because then we get to say, wait, is she here today? Was she here last week? Am I Sarah Bat Asher? Because really, ladies and gentlemen, the reason I know this is my backstory. But yes, no, it's exciting to create this. And again, the rabbis do very bold midrashic moves, right? They sanction this, but we're allowed to feel uncomfortable with this because, again, it doesn't feel very normal, and there's points in the Torah where people are brought back to life, but immortality, and also, is that even a blessing? I could do a whole session on the fact that immortality would be a curse, right? Where you see all your loved ones die. So we're not going to get too deep into the realism of what this would mean. But what we're going to do is we're going to say, okay, rabbis, we'll play along. This is why she's still alive. And let's see what else she does. Because in the Torah, she might come up again, or at least in later Torah materials. Well, this is Exodus. This is Shemot Rabbah, which is, again, extra material that explains things. This is going to be a very important thing now. We'll go into prophecy now. In Exodus Rabbah, we have Rabbi Eliezer, who's also in the Talmud. He says there were 5 letters that were doubled, and all of them indicate redemption. This is now playing with Hebrew texts. They were given to Abraham. Abraham passed them to Isaac, and Isaac to Jacob. Jacob passed them to Joseph, and Joseph to his brothers, as it says, Pakod Yifkad. Now that in Hebrew, Pakod Yifkad, I put this in yellow, but a p can become a f. If you take the dot out, pei and fei are both the same letters. They're just pronounced differently if they're not at the beginning of the word. So this letter here is the same. Pakod Yifkod. It's the same word, and this means yes, pakadity will, I think it's about remembrance, yeah. You will surely be remembered. When you double up a word, pakad, yipakad, basically, you will surely be remembered. You will surely be redeemed. Don't get too bogged down in that. Here's what's happening in this text. The rabbis are noticing that there is a phrase in Genesis that uses this word twice. And when something is used twice, it's emphatic, it's special, it's weird. So what is going on? Why is this word happening twice? Well, it's about a prophecy going on. And again, it's important to see what the prophecy is. It's the prophecy of redemption. Joseph says to his brothers, I die, surely God will remember you, and that's Pakod Yifkad Etchem, remember you all, and bring you up out of the land to this land which God swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. We have the deliverance of a promise, which is you will be redeemed. Pakod Yifkod, with two letters that are very similar, like two words that are the same. So what we first, again, nothing yet to do with Serach but Asher. But what we're learning is that there are some secret letters that are passed down from generation to generation that need to be paid attention to, i.e., when you hear this, something magical will happen. Here's part 2, because this, don't worry if it's confusing, strap in. This is, again, rabbinic math and rabbinic kind of prophecy. Asher, a son of Jacob, who's in their descendants, passed the secret of redemption to Serach, his daughter. When Moses and Aaron came to the elders of Israel and performed signs in front of them, the elders went to Serach, the daughter of Asher. They said to her, hey, one man has come and performed signs in front of us. And she said, there's no significance to these signs, i.e., this person is not your redeemer. Because, by the way, I'm just going to take you back for a second. The point in time that this part of the story is happening is those 300-400 years that the Hebrews were enslaved. They're enslaved, they're waiting for a redeemer, they're praying, and they don't know who to believe. Because any charlatan, and we've had false messiahs, any charlatan can come and say, let's leave now, let's rebel, kill the gods, run. And the Israelites are not going to necessarily know, is this guy for real? Do I follow? Do I leave? Or is this person corrupt, or are they mad? So you need someone to validate your Messiah. You need someone to authenticate. And what we've learned is Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and then Jacob to his children, one of his children is Asher, they are told, here is the secret code. Someone is going to come along and double up a word. And it's a code word. And when you hear it, you'll know it's the Redeemer because God will have put the words into that person's mouth. And what's amazing is that this prophecy went to a woman, like the guardian. I mean, this happens in the high priest code as well, whereby there's only one high priest knows God's full name and would go into the innermost chamber on Yom Kippur and say the full tetragrammaton. You know, Yud He Vav He, Adonai, Elohim, Shalom, all of these names for God aren't even a real name. There's a secret real name of God. So too, there is a secret code of who is going to redeem the people, and they'll get the Torah and Judaism can start. Serach is given the code. She is going to validate Moses. That's what we're seeing, because again, what is this? Who is this Moses? Why should I listen to him? You know, it's very easy to say, I saw a burning bush and God's speaking to me right now. I could say that. We could all say that to each other. You don't know this, but can you imagine if someone from the lineage of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob said that to you? So let's go back now. At first, she says, this is just no one special. But then they told her, he said, pakod, pakadati. Can you hear that? That's the same word as the yifkod poked. Ah, she replied, the man who will redeem Israel has come. For I have heard from my father the secret of pei. That's the letter pei, the Hebrew letter pei. Pe, which is pronounced fe if you have a consonant or a vowel before it. Immediately, the people were then convinced, because it says that, and the people were convinced. At the very beginning of Exodus chapter 4, had the people not been convinced, they wouldn't have followed Moses. They wouldn't have put blood on their door. They wouldn't have left Egypt. Serach but Asher, just in the way that Miriam but Pharaoh, any of our other brave women, was the reason the Exodus happened, because she comes to say, that's our true leader, that's Moses. I just got chills, right? She's carrying the Exodus story. And again, I think it comes from, like, why would this be generated? The rabbis are asking themselves the question, why would the Israelites believe Moses? And they need someone who is the voice of truth and wisdom. And again, we know what Serach bat Asher first did with her voice. She convinced Jacob. She vouched for Joseph being alive. He could have not believed her. No, Joseph is dead. I've mourned him. What are you doing to an old man? Oy vey, my heart. But instead, there's some kind of just sincerity about her that makes men believe her. Yay, feminism, right? What a cool story. Because, by the way, you could have given this role to anyone. It could have been Asher. It could have been Ephraim and Manasseh. And we get Serach being like, this is the Messiah. I know the secrets. So just yay. Again, she's very cool. She is the only female in this chain. This isn't enough for the rabbis. She is going to appear and be used yet again, and this is what Susie was hinting at. So she comes along at a very important point and says, Moses is the person to believe. We're getting ready to leave. We're now going to see her again at the end of our Egyptian time, because there's another very crucial thing, which is there are nights that the 10 plagues have happened, the plagues have plagued, but the Israelites still need to leave. And Moses is in crisis, because what can't Moses find? You said it. What's Moses looking for? Joseph's bones, right. There was a promise. Again, by the way, this is all about promises and loyalty and family legacy. Moses is going to be charged with bringing the bones of Joseph, because this is what happens at the end of Genesis. Joseph is going to die in Egypt and say, that's not good. I need to be buried in my homeland. I need my body to go to Canaan. So you've got to bring me with you, right? We're going to be in Egypt for a while. And Moses can't find the bones. Do we have a guess as to who is going to help him? Sarah. You've been paying attention. Gold stars for everyone. Look at this. This is, again, another midrash. Why did Moses, that the Holy One, bury him? The rabbis love to kind of make, wonderful things happen like that. Because at the time that the Israelites were busy searching out the gold and silver of Egypt, Moses wandered around the city for 3 days and 3 nights to find Joseph's coffin, but he could not find it. Afterwards, exhausted, he met Serach bat Asher. She asked him, our master Moses, why are you exhausted? He told her. She said to him, come with me. And she took him to the Nile River. She said, at this place, they weighted down a coffin of 500 talents of lead. That's very heavy. They placed him inside and threw it into the river, because the magicians had said to Pharaoh, do you want this nation to never leave? arrange that they cannot find Joseph's bones, and they will never leave here, because so he made them swear. And immediately, Moses, it's a miracle, by the way, he exhumes the bones and carried them on his shoulder. 500 talents of lead. That is going to give you a hernia, my friends. So that's a lot. But yes, at yet again another crucial moment, because Moses also would not leave, and therefore the people would not leave, Sarah comes to save them. She, in this, in terms of what her personality traits are here, what would you say she's doing here? What's remarkable about this? Is she using her harp and her song? She's a leader. She's such a leader. At this point as well, what a leader has is knowledge. She has this knowledge. She is the keeper of the secrets. She is the watcher. She noticed what the Egyptian magicians were doing. She knew the spot. She's paying attention. And then she's coming and she was finding Moses, right? Is it a coincidence that he bumps into the one person that is really needed in this? She is the one that, again, signals salvation can come. And Moses, who is exhausted, he hasn't slept for 3 nights, performs this miracle. And there's actually paintings of this. The coffin comes up from the depths of the Nile, and there's like levitation and flotation, and then he's able to carry the bones. And because of that, they're free. And again, notice she is connected to those ancestors, to Jacob, to Joseph, to all of these people before. So in the same way, she knew the secret codes, she knows the bones, she knows the body, and she speaks to Moses. She is Moses' advisor, right? She's telling Moses what to do. She's leading him. So yeah, that's ballsy, right? Look how far she's come. Look how many words she now has in this midrash. In that first one, we don't hear what she even said to Jacob. It just says she told him gently, but now she's been given a voice and a main character energy, and she is then the one, just like she said, listen to Moses, she's now the one to help Moses get the people out. And it's beautiful. So there's a couple more places where she is going to be used, but this is something that you could bring to your Seder, as part of the redemption story. None of this would have happened were it not for this woman pointing out, and you can have a whole 10-minute conversation. What do the bones of our ancestors represent? Why is it important that we carry on our backs our lineage, our ancestral memories? Like, it's a really spicy thing to get to talk about. And again, powerful woman. I think we now go a big leap. So this is a strap in for the people who are a little bit like, this is just not textually holding up. What we've learned from this is her character. Her character is that of outspoken, brave, and wise, and someone who is knowledgeable. The rabbis are now going to insert her into another story. And this is the most chutzpahdik thing of all, the most cheeky thing, because she's not named. So a lot of you are going to be like, that's not Sarah. And it doesn't matter, because what's amazing is that the rabbis want this biblical character to be Sarah. And we'll see why. This is a bit of a hideous story with some gore. Is anyone... The gore's okay. You've heard worse. You've had long lives. So... we're going to the book of Samuel, chapter 20, okay? And I've called this Headstrong, okay? So we're just going to strap it in here, a little story, and there's going to be a person that the rabbis are going to say, this is Sarah. Now, there happened to be a lowlife whose name was Sheba, the son of Bichri, a Benjamite. And he blew the horn and said, we have no portion in David, neither have we inheritance in the son of Jesse. Every man to his own tent, O Israelites. So the men of Israel turned away from following David to follow Sheba, the son of Bichri, except for the loyal men of Judah. David said to his advisor, Sheba will do us more harm than Absalom. one of my unfaithful sons who tried to take the kingdom away from me. Because again, this is David solidifying power. David is going to be a really good king, but there are lots of dissidents and voices and local rebellions. And what we're hearing about right now, as David is consolidating power, is we've got this character, this Sheba, who is trying to say, we shouldn't support David, support me, let's go our own way. David said to his advisor, yes, Sheba's going to do us more harm than Absalom. Take your men, pursue after him, lest he gets to the fortified cities and escape, and then start a revolution. So Joab's men were sent to pursue him. Joab was his advisor and the general of David's army. So they came and they besieged Sheba in Avel of Beth-makkah, not important, and they cast up a mound against the city. It stood in the moat, and all the people that were there with Joab battered the wall to throw it down. So there's a kind of a bit of a siege right now. Sheba is in a tower, and Joab and Joab's men, i.e. the loyalists to King David, are on the floor, and they are going to start a war. Then cried a wise woman out of the city, "Hear, hear, come near that I may speak with thee. Are you Job?" Joab. This is not Job, this is Joab. Okay? Did anyone hear Serach's name? Nope. But we do see a lady, ding, 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 a female who isn't named, very annoyingly, but hey. So, let's see what happens. Joab answered, I am the general of David's army. And then she said to him, we are of them that are peaceful and faithful in Israel. Would you destroy a city and a mother in Israel? Why will you swallow up the inheritance of the Lord? Why attack all of us? Why are you going to make war? Joab replied, far from it, but we seek Sheba, the son of Bichri, for he lifted up his hand against the King David. Deliver him only, and I will depart from the city. And the woman said to Joab, behold, his head shall be thrown to you over the wall. Then the woman went unto all the people in her wisdom. So they cut off the head of Sheba, the son of Bichri, threw it out to Joab, and he blew the horn, and they were dispersed from the city, every man back to his home. Like to his tent, that say, they all went home and had their dinner. And Joab returned to Jerusalem to the king, and then says to David, rebellion crushed, high five, right? So what's going to happen, I think, in the next page is the rabbis are going to make the claim that that wise woman is Sarah, but Asher, which is not what the text says. But first of all, what an amazing story. And just look at her character. Yet again, we have outspokenness, the ability to hold her own in front of men. And now she's actually coming up with the whole plan. You know, in that very first thing as a girl, she is set up. Like Asher and the brothers are like, Sarah, go tell Jacob this. So she does. Then she's had signs passed down to her, identifying the Redeemer by those words. Oh, I heard the words. Then it's, okay, I'm paying attention. I know where Joseph's bones are, but I've got the bravery to stand up to Moses and said, here are the bones. And now this woman, who is not Sarah but Asher, but the rabbis want her to be, so maybe she is, actually saves an entire city with her own mind, because she says, guys, we can solve this. You want this person? Let's not get all our families caught up in this. Yes, he's hiding in our city. We're not going to follow him. Let's cut his head off. It's violent. It's amazing. But it's let's kill one person to save many. So again, there's biblical echoes that we could spend time on, but I think we'll kind of, because it's it's like 10 to 12, we're gonna plow to the end. And maybe even just finish in a few minutes, because there's a couple more things to get through. But what an amazing story, because the rabbis are going to say that wise woman was Sarah, but Asher, who has now lived another 1,000 years. Because David, King David, that's now after Shoftim, after Joshua, after at least 500 years after the Moses story. Rosie, did you have a comment?
Well, just a question. Do you think it could be reincarnation that she came in the form of other women?
Reincarnation is a really great answer to that. Because there's a tiny bit of Jewish thought that says, and it's Kabbalistic, that souls can be reincarnated and given again. But I think the rabbis are going to claim this really is Serach bat Asher. So again, here's where we're going to say it. We're going to use a quote from, anyone recognize this? Strength and dignity are her clothing. She laughs at the time to come. Eshet Chayil. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the law of kindness is on her tongue. And then again, the Midrash, Mishlei, says, this was the woman who spoke to Joab and saved the town with her wisdom, and this was Serach bat Asher. In Mishlei, the book of Proverbs, and this is commentary on the book of Proverbs, and Eshet Chayil is found in that. They look at this part of the Eshet Chayil and they say, well, this is describing someone specific. And it's the Eshet Chayil, this wonderful woman, is Serach bat Asher. And they say very explicitly, do you see because again, it's the same word, the wise woman. The wise woman. And then Eshet Chayil is all about a wise woman. We're trying to basically say, this is exactly who Serach bat Asher is. Again, we're playing a rabbinic game because the text doesn't say that. It's crazy to think it's still her. In some ways, it's offensive because actually, what it's saying is, there's only one such person as a wise woman. There can only be one wise woman in the whole of Jewish frickin' history. There's no new wise woman. We can't have a nice woman there and a nice woman there and a nice woman there. It's all the same woman. It's like, how dare you? There's many wise women, right? The Eshet Chayil, this woman that the beloved rabbis are praising, that wise woman in David's time, the wise woman in Joseph's time, the wise woman in Moses' time. It's the same person. How dare you? But it's also a beautiful way to pay attention to these personality traits. The fact that, again, she's strong. She laughs at the time to come. The idea of prophecy, that if she's immortal, she's still alive, so she can see the time to come. She's not afraid of it. She opens her mouth with wisdom. She is this truth teller. She's so knowledgeable and wise. And she's kind. The law of kindness is on her tongue. She saves a city by truthfully identifying the rebel. She gets Jacob through this incredible bombshell. And it said she was gentle. She used song and harp, right? So this is the girl, that we're describing, and it's beautiful. Anyway, there's one more text where Serach appears, right? And it's even more further in the future, and we'll end on this because this actually gets us back to Pesach. We've got like a few minutes to 12, but strap in. This is the most ridiculous, far-fetched one. They are going to use her name, but we're going to have to go back to the very beginning and say, wow, that really is many thousands of years, because she is going to come to the Beit Midrash, where the rabbis of the Talmud, who are a couple of hundred years ago now, like 6th century, 7th century, 8th century, maybe those stories were generated earlier, but we're talking post-Jesus. Jesus is 1,000 years after David. So she very well could be in this room right now. But she is going to, again, notice what she's going to do in this final story. It's very short. It's one of my favorite things to happen, okay, in the whole Talmud. Actually, it's a Pesikta de Rav Kahana, who is rabbinic. He's rabbinic sermon. He's coming from the 6th century, but he's teaching about Rabbi Yochanan, who's in the Talmud. Rabbi Yochanan was sitting in the Beit Midrash and expounding upon the verse in Exodus. So he's going back to the leaving of Egypt. The waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. So we're talking actually about the splitting of the sea. That's what those waters are. And asks the question, how could the water become as a wall? The students asked. They're studying Torah, And there's a weird description. The waters were like a wall. What? Wall is solid, water is liquid. That doesn't make sense. Again, some of you would have said the same thing if we were studying it. Yochanan explained, it was a sort of impervious, opaque net. Then, Sarah bat Asher appeared. Like, again, you can imagine what that feels like. Does she just like beam in? Does she go from the ceiling? Like, how does that even look? And she said, I was there. You know, the water was not as a net, but as transparent windows, like a mirror. And that's the end of that story. They're then like, thanks, and then it moves on to another part of what the rabbis are discussing. She appears to, and Rabbi Yochanan, big famous rabbi, she comes to correct him, right? She's not being told what to say. She's now saying, don't even tell my story. You know, I mean, she's also doing it in a loving way of like, let me tell you more. I love that you're curious, students. You're trying to imagine the Exodus. Here's what it was like. Let's have a character that's going to come and help us out. Yet again, delivering knowledge. And it's an incredible move for whoever wrote this. Because again, the entirety of the Israelite tribe were part of the Exodus. And they could have chosen any individual. You know, we had a story where Moses is taken to Rabbi Akiva's Beit Midrash to have a look at Rabbi Akiva at one point. So we have the idea of time travelers coming in and out of history. We could have had Joshua, Nahum, we could have had Miriam. And the rabbis choose Sarah bat Asher because to them, and therefore in our Judaic tradition, Sarah represents wisdom, outspokenness, positive, awesome female energy. And like here again, she one-ups the rabbis. You know, she's kind of saying, she contradicts. She doesn't say, you're right. You know, she's like, don't be fools. Like, I'd love to know how she says this. If she's very deferential. Oh, with all due respect, you don't know. Stop mansplaining. You know, it's gorgeous. And actually what she comes to teach is so beautiful. And again, I'm not interested in the technicalities and the logic anymore, because this is our last slide. Actually, our last slide is just this. From a great movie, Charlton Heston there. But, because by the way, this is our central image of the Pesach story. This is the moment of redemption. The rabbis are reminding us, yet again, Sarah was there. What did it feel like? What did it look like? I love that the rabbis and the students are discussing this. And what Sarah says is incredibly powerful, because for her to say it was shimmering, it was like a mirror, that answers the question, what did it feel like to actually go through the parted sea? Because what would you see if it was a mirror? You'd see yourself. You'd see the people around you. You would see not the scariness, not the leviathans and the fishies in the water, not the Israelites, but that you would see you. You would be like, oh, and it would comfort you. And you would see like the kids' hands you are holding, and you'd see your luggage. You might think, oh my God, I'm having a bad hair day today. Like this ocean spray is really screwing with my natural curls. But you would feel so comforted, I think, because it's dark, it's scary, and you're seeing your family. And again, you could look back, you'd see the people behind you, you'd see the people in front of you. But that is incredible that she says, like, it was just like a mirror. It felt small. We saw ourselves. Because this whole story has been about identity. It's been about her saying, you know, this is who I come from. I'm Asher's daughter, and Asher was Jacob's son, and Jacob was Isaac's, and Isaac was Abraham, and I saw King David, and I'm all the way in your story. And I'm here to say that we see ourselves in the Pesach story, because that, and this is, I'm going to just kind of mic drop and then end the class because it's powerful stuff, but then we can talk. And if anyone needs to go and have lunch, that's fine, but I'll be here for like these more reflections because I love hearing what you all have to say. But just to kind of end the teaching, in the Haggadah, the mitzvah of the Magid, of the story of Pesach, is to tell it as if we were there. And that bit of Torah tells us how to be there, because it tells us really that all of this water is a mirror, that it's holding up to us. We are meant to see ourselves. She sees herself, and we see ourselves today. And she could be one of us because she's still alive, you know. So it's this incredible, deeper teaching than you think. It's not just, I'm going to contradict the men in the room. It's actually saying, we hold up these Jewish texts, and we are meant to see ourselves. And we're meant to take these qualities with us and be wise but kind, and stand up and talk and use our experiences and connect to our history to kind of go forward, and that's what redemption really is. So it's such powerful Torah, and that's why it doesn't matter that this probably, definitely didn't happen. The rabbis need it to happen, they want it to happen, and gosh darn, isn't it beautiful and reflective? So that is the Serach Bat Asher teaching. Feel free to take any parts of that for your Seder or just to go woo. And maybe I suggest a Kos Serach Bat Asher rather than a Kos Miriam, like, you know, or an Eliyahu Hanavi. Put a chair out for Serach Bat Asher at your Seders.
She's the female
Equivalent of Elijah. Absolutely. I do think she should be the female equivalent of Elijah. And had the rabbis been more feminist, they could have said that. They could have had everyone invite her into our Seders. Because again, she doesn't die and she appears when you want her to. So I love that. Anyway, like I said, we are formally finished because I don't want to disrespect your time as it's 12. But if anyone wants to keep talking, we can keep going.
Okay. This is important because the image isn't one mirror, it is two. And when you put two mirrors against each other, you see like surround of the entire world is people, your people. It represents unity.
I should have had that as part of class. That was such a deep point. But you know, when you have two mirrors, you actually see infinity. You see immortality, and she is immortal. You know, and it goes back and back and back forever. So, woo! Anyone else?
Well, I looked it up on the internet, and the Muslims also revere her. Wikipedia.